So I think today we want to talk about nearshore hiring, not as cheap labor, but as a better team design. The deeper value is that nearshore hiring can help companies build a better team structure, a team that is leaner, more seniority, a better time zone alignment, and where people have a very clear role, clear ownership, I think also is very important, and a clear business need. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our new episode here with us at Globedesk. So today we are talking about nearshore hiring, remote design, and how companies should think about Latam talent now, and that AI is changing that environment and the structure of work as well.
Mm.
So a lot of companies still look at nearshore hiring mainly through the lens of cost. And of course, cost always matters. We know that. For founders, CTOs, and business leaders, salary levels, runway, burn rate, hiring efficiency are real business concerns. But if the conversation always starts and ends with cost, companies miss the bigger picture, in my opinion. So the strongest reason to look at nearshore hiring is not simply that you can hire at a different salary level, is that you can rethink how your team should be built.
Yeah, absolutely. And nearshore can be used in a very basic way. We need
Mm.
someone cheaper to do the same work. But it can also be used in a more strategic way. What kind of team do we actually need now? And when we look at the team, where do we need seniority? Where do we need flexibility? Do we need better time zone overlap? Stronger communication? And also, where do we need people who can work with AI instead of simply doing repetitive task manually?
Mm. Yes. So I think today we want to talk about nearshore hiring, not as cheap labor, but as a better team design. A
Mm.
little bit about those topics that you kind of mentioned now, Sarah. It is a very relevant topic for us, and we usually get a lot of questions around nearshore and how it should be designed and what to think about. So, in this episode, we really have gathered, I think, our top questions from our clients, and we really wanted to share them with you.
Yeah.
So, I think the first question and the most common question is, what is the real value of nearshore hiring?
Mm.
So, yeah, a simple answer would be that companies can access talent in nearby time zone at a cost efficient level.
Mm.
I think that's very true. Of course, as we all know, that is not the full answer. The deeper value is that nearshore hiring can help companies build a better team structure, a team that is leaner, more seniority, a better time zone alignment, and where people have a very clear role, clear ownership, I think also is very important,
Yeah.
and a clear business need. The basic concept of feeling very needed in a company, I think, is very important.
Yeah. And with nearshoring cost savings, that could be a good outcome, but it's not a strategy on its own. A company can reduce salary cost and still build the wrong team. So it can hire remotely and still create confusion. And also add more people, but still don't move faster or get better results. So the better questions here is, what problem is this hire supposed to solve? Is it capacity, speed, seniority, a lack of ownership, a missing skill set, or is the work itself not structured properly?
Mm. And I think, in my experience, sometimes companies think they have a hiring problem, but what they actually have is a structural problem. So the role can be very unclear, their responsibilities can overlap, the onboarding can be weak, which unfortunately we have experienced with previous companies. I think this is a very challenging aspect. And as a result, I think the team doesn't know who owns what, and this makes decision making too slow.
Yeah. And when you bring someone new into a unclear structure, especially remotely, the gaps show up very quickly. Nearshore does not fix a messy team structure. It can be the opposite, that it makes the
Mm.
problem even more visible for everyone.
Yeah, and we have experienced that as well, I think.
Yeah.
So I think if you're sitting here and you are exploring nearshore hiring and to maybe understand better Latam and talent and how that can fit in your environment, we do have resources on our webpage on globedesk.one where we explain models, salary differences, and perhaps what companies should consider before and after hiring. I think that can really help you get started in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that we have is, what is the difference between cheap hiring and efficient hiring? And there is a big difference. Cheap hiring asks, how low can we go?
Mm,
And efficient hirings ask, okay, what level of skills and output do we need for this role to really work?
mm, exactly. I think when companies only optimize for price, they often accept compromises that they would not accept perhaps in their local market, right? So they may lower the bar on communication and seniority and skip this sort of proper onboarding as we kind of mentioned before. And I think worst of all, treating the person who sits, remotely differently to the one sitting in-house, right?
Mm, definitely. And then when it doesn't work out, the conclusion becomes, oh no, nearshore is difficult. We don't want to do nearshoring. But often the real issue was not the region, it was the hiring logic behind. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think for me at least, I would love to emphasize that nearshore shouldn't mean that you're lowering your standards, right? If anything, companies needs to be a little bit more intentional because the person joining remotely are usually, crossing countries and crossing cultures as well.
Yeah. And also what we have found is that the role needs to be clearer. So the expectations, how and when you communicate, and also the definition of kind of success needs to be clearer. So the nearshore person can fully understand the structure of the role and the assignment.
Mm, exactly. And I think for us, at least, structures and bureaucracy, structure is really what makes this sort of remote collaboration a bit calmer, a bit more fair, and most importantly, effective, because that's what we all want at the end, right?
Yeah.
So, question three, something that's always on everybody's mind is how does AI change team design, right?
Mm.
So AI always adds another layer into this, right? So many managers are looking at their teams and realizing that some tasks can be used through a person and supported that way, or they will have AI handling a part of that workload. It varies, right?
Mm. Yeah, they know AI can help with certain tasks, but they don't always know how to redefine the role around that. So they maybe ask, do we still need this role? But maybe the better question is, what should this role become now when we have AI as a tool?
Hmm. And I think before, many teams were built around task volume. If there was too much work, companies just added another person to help with that workload. But if AI now can reduce some of that task volume, right, the value of the human role really changes, and it's a huge topic. I think that is an ongoing discussion worldwide.
Yeah. And the real value a person brings is judgment, ownership, prioritizing, communication, and also quality control.
Mm. very soft values in individuals, right? Something that people now need to consider a bit more, like what
Mm,
functions within my team.
mm,
And I think that question becomes then is what should AI handle? All right.
yeah.
What should people own? Where do we need seniority? Where do we need real collaboration um, and strong communication?
Yeah. And sometimes the team doesn't need more members, it needs clearer ownership.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, AI doesn't really remove the need for team design, right? It just makes that the design itself becomes more important, or you need more time to understand how it functions and how to improve it in today's
Yeah.
society. Mm.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we all can agree on that AI has brought speed to how what we can produce and so on. But speed without judgment can create problems.
Hmm.
So the value of the person moves toward this ownership that we are talking about. And I think from personal experiences, we all can say that AI is not perfect yet.
Hmm.
And this is also a topic that we will talk more about on future episodes. So please don't forget to subscribe. Okay, that was AI. Let's move on to next question. So why does senior Latam talent matter in lean teams?
Hmm.
Yeah. And when it comes to companies and when they are building leaner teams, and especially with AI in the picture, senior talent becomes even more important.
Hmm. I agree. I think a senior person is not only someone who completes the task, right? A senior person can make decisions, ask the questions that might be needed, hopefully challenge sometimes assumptions, right? To, push the company forward and understanding the business context.
Yeah. And the strategic comparison here is not only what does one engineer cost here versus there, it is what kind of team can we build with the same budget.
Yeah, exactly. And also, shall we bring in more seniority? Shall we reduce, I don't know, unnecessary layers, right? Can we avoid overhiring, which I think now is on a lot of leaders' mind, right? How we can perhaps minimize certain aspects of our company with the replacement of AI, even though I think the structure, again, is not a place yet for that, right?
Mm. No, very, very true. And that is also why we don't like the idea of nearshoring being positioned as sheep developers or yeah, sheep marketers or other profession. The opportunity is not to hire cheaper versions of the same role. The opportunity is to build a different team structure.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're ready for the next question then. Also a classic, I have to say. So, why do time zones matter in nearshore hiring? Hmm?
Mm.
Might be pretty obvious, but people sometimes talk about time zone overlap, right? As if it's just convenient. But I think in a remote team, time zone overlap is part of operational model.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, especially also if someone works like closer with the product team, engineering, leadership, or clients, then overlap really matters. It affects feedback loops, trust, speed, and whether also the person feels included or isolated.
Mm, yeah, exactly. And I actually think if I think back of our customer meetings in general, or all our customers, I think one of the main reasons people are hiring in Latin America is for the time zone. It's
Mm,
extremely relevant and extremely convenient for US companies. So
mm.
here it's really not just a cost advantage, right? It's an operating advantage.
Yeah. And we have talked a lot about ownership in this episode. And once again, ownership it's difficult when someone is always outside of the conversation. If the important discussions happens when the remote person is offline, then they will always be reacting from the outside.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm? Okay, that was time zone. Now let's talk about the subject that is close to our heart, and also a
Oh.
question that we get, like why Colombia? So this question is, what did Colombia teach us about team design?
Yes, it is a favorite topic of ours because when we did start working from Colombia, the two of us, a long time ago, I think one of the things that became very clear to us were how much the talent was kind of underestimated. It wasn't really on the map.
Yeah, and we never looked at Colombia and thought, oh, this is a cheap labor market. We looked at Colombia and thought, oh, here is serious talent. And we felt that companies needed help to understand how to find the talent, how to evaluate the talent, and also how to work with the talents properly.
Exactly. I think if the message is only, we are here because you cost less, right? It doesn't really create that loyalty or motivation. But I think if the message is, again, your skill is excellent, we value the contribution, we want you to be part of a serious team, that does create a very different relationship. Now, I do understand that this sounds so obvious to someone that it's something that is implemented, but you'd be surprised. Many companies do not implement this. They do have this sort of separation.
Yeah.
It would be that needs to
Mm,
change more.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And also, I mean, we the same person, they can perform very differently depending on the structure around them. And I think we all have had that experience sometime in our career. We've been in a workplace where we felt like, okay, everything is great. Yeah, we have such a good spirit and everything is moving as it should. And then you have maybe been in an environment that is more like negative and so on. So even if you're a high performer, when you are put in the wrong structure, you cannot perform as you would like to do.
Totally.
So I think it's very important to think about all these kind of topics.
Oh.
And also regarding this, we have packed our web page with information about hiring and finding talents in Colombia. So if you need more information, head to globedesk.one and we got you covered.
Yeah, that's very true. So the next question, also very interesting. I think, what should companies ask
Mm,
before hiring nearshore? Now,
mm,
I think we've touched upon the larger topics, which is relevant. So the first one, of course, are we trying to reduce cost or are we trying to build a better team? Again, I find it that it sounds obvious, but I can tell you from experience that's not the case. So this is a very good startup question, in my opinion.
mm,
I think also what problem is the role trying to solve? Also quite obvious. And perhaps less obvious is again which part of the work can be done by the person and which part of the work can be supported by AI, right?
mm, mm,
Um, what the person should own is also very important, I think. The seniority, as we have spoken a little bit about, which seniority do you see fit in your company? Um, and if I can mention the time zones again, of course, does this role really require, real time collaboration? Most of them do, in all
mm,
honesty, but it's an important thing to think about.
mm.
So overall, nearshore works best when the company sees the person as part of his team, even if the employment is set up differently. And I think the questions that I kind of mentioned now is touching upon that topic.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And also, I hope everyone, after listening to this, have in mind that nearshoring is not just about saving money; it's about building the right team for where your company is going.
Hmm. And that's also why we say always nearshore is not cheap labor. It
Mm,
is a team design and for the better.
Mm.
So if you're building a remote team or hiring in Latam or trying to understand how Nearshore should fit your company, we're hoping that we have helped you a little bit along the way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we would like to thank everyone for listening. And if you found value, please comment and subscribe. Until next time.
Mm.